Hello, Eek Wild. I'm Sarah, and I'm going to be interviewing you today. You have been given a grant from Sputnik to create some work. So we're just going to chat together and find out a little bit more about the company and about the project that Sputnik are going to be funding. So could you kick us off by just letting us know who is Eek Wild? What are they? What do they do?
Katie, do you want to kick us off with our story?
Can, yeah. So Eek Wild is basically the three of us, and we are all independent dancers. So we're all self-employed and we work for lots of different people, but we formed together as a company called Eek Wild. And we basically came together during lockdown because we all wanted something fun to do. And we decided to make a couple of dance films together. And it went really well and we really loved working together. And so just organically what has happened is we've just evolved into making work together more regularly and working for a hospital, which I think we'll talk about in a minute.
Lovely. Okay. And I understand that there's three people who are, Emily, Ella and Katie, which makes sense with the Eek, right? But where does the wild come from? That's my personal question. I just want to find out.
Oh, so we had an original name, which was, well, no one really knew how to say it, including us, which was El Qaim, which was like Ella, Katie, and Emily, the first two letters of our names, but no one could say it. So we were like, right, let's scrap this. So we got rid of that, and then we went for Eek, and we had loads of Eek and extra words. And then I think, Katie, it was you. You were like, oh, I really like Eek Wild because we were a bit cheeky and a bit fun, and that was the kind of work that we were making. So I think that's how it came about.
I think we enjoyed that it, instead of being meek and mild, we're Eek Wild.
I love that. Yes, brilliant. Yes, okay, that's great. I love that. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about this project that Sputnik are going to be funding. What is it, and where are you up to with it?
So we've been artists in residence at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital for nearly 2 years now, I think, nearly up to 2 years. So just to give a bit of background about where we've come from, because I think that makes sense as to the new project. So we've been working on the children's wards, so we work in outpatients and inpatients, and we've been performing our pop-up dances, which are really short. They can be performed by the bedside. We're often performing in quite small spaces with lots of other things going on. And we've been doing that for a while, really enjoying it, but also felt like something inside of us, we wanted to make something really big and something where we could really move and have lots of lifts and kind of really push ourselves, I think, physically and artistically. And the hospital, obviously, we've been there kind of as they've been coming out of COVID, and they'd been looking at getting some work that happens in the atrium space of the hospital, which is a big entrance area, really big. They needed something really impactful, and we thought we could do that. So that's kind of where we came up with this idea. The hospital has a huge art collection, and they've got these amazing sculptures and art all over the hospital, which is really special. And so we got inspired by some of the sculptures and we chose 3. And we started last autumn, didn't we? I think it was last autumn, where we would kind of have the pictures or postcards of these sculptures, and we started to just chat with the children that we were meeting on the wards about what they liked about them. If they could see a dance about them, what would it look like? So that was kind of where the project started from. And then I'll hand over to someone else to talk about how we took those initial conversations into the project we have now.
Shall I go for it? Yeah, so we basically took the children's ideas and some of our own ideas, and through making lots of tasks and discussing things together and improvising, we basically formed these 3 little dances based on 3 of the sculptures, which has been quite a long process. And we've been using, the hospital has a studio space which has been amazing, but actually more recently someone else is using the studio. So it's been really great to apply for this funding with Sputnik, because it's enabled us to be able to get some space and actually have some time together to refine what we made. We managed to make kind of a sketch of what we were doing, but we needed to rehearse it and spend a bit more time together. Yeah, anyone got anything to add?
No, I think other than the fact that, yeah, we just really wanted to get it performance ready. Like there's a real difference between kind of like having like a sketch or something and actually getting it like, we are ready for the public. It's super professional. We've got costumes. We've got everything is like really ready. Yeah, and I suppose this project has, this funding, sorry, has allowed this project to really get to that level rather than feeling like we're kind of putting something together that's a bit scratchy. Yeah, and we've named it Sculpt, which is really exciting. We're still kind of getting used to the name. And the project kind of is encompassed in our values of giving audiences choice. So the audience get given these 3 different cards of the 3 sculptures, and they can choose which one they want to see first. So our show is interchangeable and is different each time. So the audience choose which order they want to see the pieces in. Yeah, and I think we maybe start performing in May, which is really exciting.
Exciting. Soon.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So you've talked a bit about working in the hospital context, and obviously when you were dancers in residence there all that time, you've been doing more kind of smaller or bedside performances. What are the joys and maybe even as well the difficult practicalities that you've had to overcome with working in that context? Because I think Sculpt maybe gives you a bit more room and a bit more space, which perhaps we're used to working in, whereas working kind of round machines and in contexts like that is a little bit different perhaps to where dancers usually are seen. So can you talk a little bit about that, both the joys and perhaps the difficulties?
Yeah, I think one of the joys is that it's a much more intimate performance. Because many of the interactions that we have are one-to-one, and you're making time and space for an individual child and their normally parents or grown-ups in the room. And I think actually that makes them feel quite special, whereas like in a theatre context, you know, you don't normally get a one-to-one interaction. So that's really lovely, and they get choice, they get to choose what they want to see because of that one-to-one interaction space. So that's been really lovely. And I think, yeah, I think it also broadens the horizons and expectations of what dance is. I think people are quite often shocked when we say, oh, would you like to see a dance today? And they think we're going to take them out the hospital room into another space in the hospital. And, you know, we have to say, no, we can do it right here by your bed. And I think they have no idea what they're going to see. And I think it sort of, yeah, challenges that expectation of what dance is. So that's really special.
It is tricky because you're in a tiny room and there's a bed and there are machines and there's a sink behind you and there's a rail above you and there's also 3 of us, so like we do just take up quite a bit of space. But I think in a way it's also a great thing because it just causes us to have to think on our feet. And actually, as dancers, we all love improvisation and we love to play. So there's something really fun about being like, oh, the next movement I have to do is here and there's a sink there. Right, what should I do? And trying to just like adapt it in the moment. And I think because we've all worked together for a while, we can read each other really well. So that's quite fun. I was thinking another challenge in the hospital is wearing a mask. As performers, that's really hard. I think as well, the kind of work that we do is really playful and really fun, and we use our faces a lot. So yeah, that's been a real challenge, actually, having our faces covered. But I think you can do a lot with your eyes in terms of connection with the patients, which is really cool.
Is that there to stay, do we think, the masks for long term?
I think maybe on the wards it is. Yeah. Also, one other thing, I don't know if it's a difficulty or joy, maybe both, is just like being aware that actually we're not the most important thing in the room, and as soon as like a doctor or a nurse or someone comes in, like we take it, like the space is constantly changing, so we're constantly kind of reassessing, evaluating. Okay, great, we're not needed, we'll leave. Okay, great, we can come in. So there's this kind of flexibility to the space, but I think it frees you up just knowing that, like, we're there and we can do what we can do, but actually, like, we're not saving lives. Like, we're definitely not the most important people in that space. Yeah, it's a really unique opportunity that I think every time we go in never fails to surprise. Yeah.
Sounds great. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about kind of the idea of choice and interaction with your audiences. I can imagine if I had a child who was in that context and they were able to move, they might want to start to move or get up and collaborate in some kind of way. Do you think ever in the future you might think about kind of pushing that idea of collaboration, or like physically moving with your audiences, or do you think it's more about a kind of a watching and a observing and interacting in a different way?
I think
oh, go on, Ella.
Oh, sorry. I think interaction's always been quite a big part of what we've done. So the stuff that we do on the wards, we have our little mini pop-up dances, and then at the end of each one, we have an open invite for interaction.
Okay.
And this often leads to some kind of improvisation. And obviously, if the child or young person isn't having it, then it ends there. But if they are, then we can sometimes go on like 10-minute long movement with these children, which is really exciting. With this new show, we have no idea what's going to happen, which feels quite exciting. So because we're in a completely different space, it's really public, it's open, it's shifting all the time. I think we're definitely open and quite excited about the prospect that interaction could happen. Like, we could finish our dance and maybe there is an invite that's offered, but I think because we haven't done it yet, so I think maybe I'm right in saying we're kind of excited to see what might happen.
It also comes under like hospital precautions. Now we're in a public space. I think it's taken a lot for us to even be allowed to perform in a public space. So as much as we might want to follow it with a workshop and get everyone up, actually that might not be possible at the moment. But I think it can go there, and I'm hoping that it can go there if we're told it's safe enough. That would be really good.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll have to ask that question in 2 years' time and see how it's all progressed. Okay, lovely. And so we've talked about the company, about this project. I'd also be interested, just kind of more from a personal perspective. I work in the arts as well as a dancer, and I'm also a Christian. I don't meet huge numbers of people who work in the arts who are Christians. And I just wondered, what has your experience been working as dancers who are also Christians? And yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about that dynamic and how that works?
Yeah. So I think the three of us, because we all work as independent dance artists in lots of different contexts, and I think for all three of us, sometimes we work in more of a faith-based context, and sometimes we're with organizations that don't have any affiliation with Christian faith or any faith at all. So we're quite used to being in those various different contexts. But I think for me anyway, and I'm probably the same for Ella and Katie, is that we're the same person in both those contexts. So we're not more Christian in the Christian context than we are in more of the mainstream context. And I think there are so many beautiful aspects of the Christian faith. There's love and joy, peace, kindness, gentleness, all those things that underpin every decision I make and my behaviors and my attitudes. And I like to think that those underpin the way I behave in a faith context, in not a faith context, but also when I'm not dancing as well, just in everyday life. And I think maybe the separation of all the different pockets of life is not that helpful a view, but actually they're all melded together in this messy thing of life, and that our faith kind of permeates into everything. So I hope that's helpful illustration.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just us, isn't it? Living life. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I don't think I've got kind of anything else to unpack really. I saw some rehearsal photos of Sculpt the other day, and it's looking really, really good. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes and hearing more about the company. And thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh, and would also like to say a big thanks to Sputnik for funding us, because
Yeah.
um,
Thank you.
without the funding we wouldn't have been able to do it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. All right. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to you all. Thank you very much for speaking with me. All right. Bye-bye, Eek Wild.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.